Welcome to Game Changers with Molly Fletcher, where we take you behind the scenes with peak performers to learn what makes them tick and discover how you can apply their lessons to your life. I'm your host, Molly Fletcher. So today is a pretty awesome episode of Game Changers. We have taken the best of 2017, all the top interviews that we've had, all the amazing conversations that we've had, and we've kind of spliced it up and cut it up so that you can grab clips from many of these amazing people. We've had an opportunity to chat with coaches and athletes and executives, some awesome people. I feel certainly so grateful that these incredible guests have taken time out of their lives and their days to share so many cool nuggets for all of us to learn from. So let's dig in. First up is one of our most popular episodes to date. Geno Auriemma is the head coach of women's basketball at UConn. And you know, this guy knows how to win, right? He's incredible at what he's done, and he's built an amazing program that has had such consistent success over such a long period of time. It's really remarkable. And I know, as the mother of three daughters who all play sports, I can promise you I was excited about picking Geno's brain about how he leads these young women and how he's done so in a way that has created such tremendous success. Because it's not every day that you get to talk to a guy like this, and the conversation was full of so many nuggets that I think apply to all of us as leaders or aspiring leaders. So here's one of my favorite clips from the episode where Geno talks about why, when things are going great, that it's actually time to change.
My biggest fear is that it becomes boring and monotonous, and that winning just for the sake of winning becomes the goal, and there's no excitement to it anymore. There's no challenge to it anymore. And then even winning isn't fun anymore. And for me, the biggest thing is when you've done something really good, and we've done it for a long time. For me, the big challenge is, all right, I don't want to change what we're doing because obviously it's better than most. But how do I tweak it so that it's a little more exciting, that it's a little more fun, that there's a little bit of another spice added to it that changes the flavor of it? You have to be willing to experiment, so you have to be willing to look at other places, at other things, and go, why did the Dallas Cowboys years and years and years ago when I was younger, why did they have a different setup than most other teams? Well, they have better players. No, that's not the answer. They had a better vision of what it would look like. So why were the 49ers with Bill Walsh, why were they different? Well, they had Joe Montana and they had Jerry. No, that's not the answer. Because lots of people have good players. What were they doing that other people weren't doing? And so I'm constantly looking at different things that other people are doing to say, why did they decide to do it that way when no one else was doing it that way? If you do that when you're losing, it's a kind of a desperate move. You're searching, and you end up changing every year because you're constantly grasping at straws. But when you do it when you're on top, you're kind of looking down at the valley, and you're getting a chance to pick and choose what or how much or how little you want to add to what you have. And that's the best time to do it, because nobody's going to look at you and go, like, I don't look at it as, well, what if we fail? What if this doesn't work? What if I change my approach to the way we play defense, or to the way we run our offense, or to certain things that we do? What if I change and it doesn't work? Well, so what? What are they going to say? I'm not worried about failure.
So how cool, right? When things are going great, it's time to change. That sometimes isn't how we maybe think. That's not necessarily our default mindset, right? But I think what I took from this, number one, was that oftentimes we make changes in our lives because we have to. And when we do it then, it's a little bit of a different process. But when we make changes in our lives when we're at the top, it's a little bit of a healthier process. It's not as maybe desperate in nature. And so I think for all of us to look at areas of our lives where we're having great success and kind of look under the covers and say, gosh, is there a way that I should pivot or even try to make it potentially a little bit better? We think about some of the most amazing products in the world, and you think about the Apples of the world and companies that have had such sustained success and continue to evolve and grow. And, Apple to me comes to mind as a company and an organization. And I think we see great programs, great athletes, great coaches do the same things, and us as business people can as well. The other thing I took away from Geno is how important it is for us to be curious, right? For us to stay at the top, we have to continue to be curious, ask questions of ourselves and others so that we can learn and so that we can continue to evolve and get better. If you want to listen to my full episode with Geno, you can go to Game Changers with Molly Fletcher on iTunes and download Geno Auriemma on winning and winning some more, as we said. I want to move to a great friend of mine, a guy that I actually had the opportunity to represent when I was a sports agent, and he and his family continue to be great and close friends. He's a wonderful, wonderful man. Tom Izzo, the men's basketball coach at Michigan State. He may come across, as many of us have maybe seen on the sidelines, as a pretty tough guy, and he certainly is. But I will tell you, he is also one of the most genuine, caring coaches that you'll ever meet. Tom has coached a national championship team, and he's built incredible chemistry inside of the teams that he's had. And so I wanted to talk to him a little bit about the characteristics of great teams. And here's what he had to say.
There's a couple of common denominators. First of all, I think great teams start from the top on down, and at a place like this, it's got to be the president and the AD and the head coach and boom, boom, boom. In the pros, it's got to be the owner, the GM, the coach, and the players. But you're not going to have great teams without having great players, so recruiting is a big part of it. But the chemistry of a team, the camaraderie, you look at championship teams, there's never seems to be a championship team that doesn't have a million reunions, and everybody comes back for them because there was a sincere love for each other, a caring for each other. Very few times do you find championship teams you say, boy, they had a lot of selfish guys. It just doesn't work that way. You don't get to that championship level. You win a lot of games with regular players, but you win championship with special guys that have a special feel for one another.
Sure.
Magic Johnson here at our school once said to me, great players play great, and we got it on our wall now, but elite players make other players great.
So one of my favorite lines from this was, great players play great, but elite players make other players great. I just love that quote because I think it applies to all of us who lead teams or are part of teams, which candidly, right, is all of us. So when you think about your team, I would challenge you to think about the people on your team. Pull back and think about each and every person and say to yourself, are they making the teammates on their team better? Are they making each other better? Because as we can see, that's the key to creating great teams. That's the key to elite players making other players great. So no matter how good any one individual might be, obviously it's more important that they also make other people on the team even better. For more takeaways on my conversation with Tom Izzo, download the episode titled Tom Izzo on Maximizing Your Team's Potential. So kind of staying on this leadership path for a minute, I had an opportunity to talk to communicator, author, and pastor Andy Stanley, and I had the opportunity and the pleasure to share the stage with Andy at LeaderCast in 2017, and I was so excited to bring him on the show and have him share his insights on leadership. As many of us know, he has so many incredible nuggets for leaders. And one of the most powerful takeaways from my conversation with Andy that I particularly connected to is how he discussed the biggest mistakes that leaders can make.
One thing, this is a very subtle thing, is I think oftentimes leaders confuse their responsibility with their competency. And what I mean is, in my organization, I'm responsible for things I don't know anything about. I'm responsible for things I virtually know nothing about. If I were to walk into our IT department and start trying to lead, it would be a disaster. And so as a leader, learning to distinguish between, okay, I may be responsible for everything, but I don't know much about anything. I think when leaders get outside their core competencies, they begin to undermine their own success. I think another mistake, big mistake, especially with young leaders, is the temptation to make too many decisions. The most empowering thing I can do as a leader, is to look at the leaders around me and say, you decide. You decide. You decide. In fact, when people ask me, hey, Andy, what's your leadership development program look like? I say it's real simple. We give people opportunities they aren't quite ready for, and then we refuse to make decisions for them. And you find out real quickly who are the quick learners, who are the folks that aren't afraid to take risk, or not take risk, but who are the people who aren't afraid to take responsibility. Because in reality, none of us are perfectly equipped or ready for the responsibilities that we're handed. But the person that's, designed to lead and created to lead, and who's, gifted or who just is passionate about leadership, they're going to figure it out. So one of the biggest mistakes leaders make is making all the decisions. When you do that, you undermine the development of the leaders around you. And so I tell leaders all the time, make as few decisions as possible. Leadership is not about making decisions. It's about making sure that the decisions that are made are correct. But the people who are closest to the event, closest to the action, they're the folks that should make the decisions. And the other thing that happens is, for the leader who feels like they have to be in on every decision, they become the bottleneck, they become the lid, and people are afraid to make decisions because they're afraid they're going to, make the boss mad. So when I talk about this to our leaders or our new staff, I always say, don't let me catch you wearing a WWAD bracelet around. What would Andy do? I don't want you to try to figure out what would Andy do. I want you to do what's best for this organization. And if I don't like it, that's my problem. And if it turns out to be a good decision, I'll be the first to say, you know what, it's not what I would have done. I'm so glad they did it, because, the goal is to have a healthy, strong organization. So, as a leader, I can't become the bottleneck by making all the decisions. And then the other mistake I see leaders make sometimes, and it's related to this, is just an unwillingness to own mistakes. When we see this politically, we all just cringe, even if it's our guy or our woman. Whenever we see someone, even someone we respect, they've made a mistake, they misspoke, they misled, and instead of taking responsibility, they dodge and they cover. And whenever that happens, we never gain respect, for that person, or we never gain more respect. So I think leaders have got to be willing to own their mistakes. In fact, they need to over-own their mistakes. And here's what we know, based on human nature: people will forgive us for bad decisions. In fact, you can actually gain moral authority and credibility by owning a bad decision, but you lose both when you cover up. So, I say to young leaders, look, the goal isn't to be perfect. The goal isn't to get it right every time. The goal is for people to follow you, and they will follow you if you're authentic. They will stop following you when they lose respect, and they'll lose respect when they feel like there's just hype and cover up. So just, be open-handed, be transparent. You're not going to get it right every time. That's okay. That's okay. But not okay is to not get it right and to not be willing to own it.
So for the leaders out there listening, let's remember this, right? Let's remember these things. So number one, right, don't confuse your responsibility with your competency. To me, that's a great one, because like Andy, I connected, right? If I was in charge of our IT department and my team is laughing right now, I can promise you it would be a problem. Number two, empower others to make decisions, right? So you decide. What a great, you get emails from people on your teams if you're a leader out there, and flip them back and say you decide. How cool. And number three, own your mistakes. One of the things that I saw with great athletes was the really good ones, when things would go wrong, or when maybe they would have a moment in a game where maybe they lost the game for the team, you look at the press conferences of the guys after, and the ones that really own it, to me, are the ones that can move past it the quickest, number one. And number two, they gain great respect from their teammates. And clearly, it's not just important that they say it, but that they mean it. But we've got to own our mistakes in our lives, because it allows us to move past them and get better. And it clearly also allows the people on our teams to gain respect for the way that we're handling the mistakes. So for more leadership insights from Andy Stanley, just download the episode. It's called Andy Stanley on 5 Characteristics of Leaders Worth Following. Gosh, so speaking of great advice from leaders, my conversation with FOCUS Brands COO and President Kat Cole was filled with incredible tactics and insights. You may know Kat's story, but if you don't, she started as a Hooters waitress to help pay the bills after her mother's divorce, and she turned it into an opportunity. And by age 26, Kat was an executive vice president of Hooters, and she was one of the youngest executives in the industry. And at age 32, she became the president of Cinnabon. One of the moments I loved in my conversation with Kat is when she shared some advice on how not to take criticism personally and actually learn from it. And this was a new approach that I hadn't heard before, and I love it. So here it is.
I think for me, I always remember advice I got from a franchisee in Argentina when I was opening restaurants down there. And he was just this really interesting business person that had great philosophies. And he said to me one day, we were having all kinds of problems opening the restaurant, and the consumers were criticizing us, the parents of the employees were criticizing us. It was equipment wasn't working. It was a tough opening to begin with. And he said, a rule I've learned is that anytime you get criticized, assume for a moment that the criticism is accurate. He said, just let that be your first thought. And what that will do is it will either A, allow you not to put your foot in your mouth and demonstrate a level of humility that will help you grow past what is you've determined is possibly accurate criticism, or B, if you think about it, you consider it's accurate and then you still decide it's not, instead of debating the criticism or the naysayers, if you will, you end up focusing more on the why. That's far more mature, thinking about getting to what might be driving someone to criticize or naysay or not believe. And so that was really great advice, and I really took it in and allowed it to color my thinking. And so as I moved up in my career, certainly there were people who would say, what is she doing here? She's, I've been in business longer than she's been alive. That's literally a quote. Mm-hmm. And so on one hand, the first thing I thought was, are they right? And so what is accurate about some of the naysayers as I was young and in big executive roles is that they were in business longer than I'd been alive. Fact. Super fact.
Right.
So what does that mean, though? And what it means is they probably have earned some scar tissue and some stripes that I haven't. It doesn't mean I haven't earned my right to be there.
I'm a big fan of shifting defensiveness to curiosity, right? Oftentimes in our lives when somebody comes at us maybe with something that isn't going right or that we're not doing right, we get defensive, and that's such a natural thing to do. But in those moments, if we can become curious, I think we can begin to shift and create a space for us to learn. So I thought the way she framed that up was pretty cool, right? So in other words, assume that the feedback that you're getting is right and stay in that space so that you can take that in and really be honest with the feedback that you're getting. And when we do that, I think we grow. You can find this episode of Game Changers under Kat Cole on authentic leadership. All right, here's a great one. Jan Smith. She's better known as Mama J. She's been the vocal coach to Justin Bieber, Usher, Zach Brown, Drake. I mean, she has a laundry list of some incredible artists that she's worked with. And so Mama J knows a thing or two about giving tough love, right? And tough feedback. And here's what she shared about how to approach giving tough feedback. And as I've gotten to know Mama J, what I will tell you is the way she delivers this and who she is as a person, I would imagine it finds a way into the hearts of the artists that she tries to connect with, because she absolutely comes from a place of love with everything that she says to the people that have the pleasure to work with her.
The truth works. Good, bad, or indifferent. I think that, the truth works and you don't have to repeat yourself or go backwards on it. So I think that, and I hate to say this, but even if it makes somebody, stomp out of the room, or they even if they don't want to maintain their relationship with me past that point in a working service manner, it's okay with me because I think the truth works. I think the second thing is my clients know that I say what I say in truth and to help them. If they choose not to, go with that advice, that's okay. That's their choice, and they have that choice. So there's no judgment in that for me. But I'm going to tell them the truth and be honest with them. And because they have so many people telling them things that might not be true, because people are enamored with their celebrity or, whatever they think that is, I think they tend to trust me because they know that I'm going to kind of shoot them straight.
So when you've taken the time to build great connection and a relationship, you can deliver tough feedback because the people on the other end know that it's coming, and it's coming from a place of love and a real desire to help. Sometimes we all have to tell people things that that they need to hear, but not necessarily that they want to hear. I can promise you as a sports agent, I had to do this often. And being able to do it from a place of connection and a place of great relationships allows that feedback to be delivered in a way that comes through and connects, hopefully, with the person on the other side of it. For more with Mama J, download the episode titled Mama Jan Smith on helping others find their voice. Another great piece of tactical advice came from business journalist and best-selling author Suzy Welch. And this is one that we can put to work in our lives right now. So here's how Suzy explains what she calls the 10-10-10 rule for making tough decisions.
Well, Molly, like many good ideas, 10-10-10 came at a moment of deep and dark desperation. I was a working mom. I was recently separated. I had 4 kids, and my life was just living me. I mean, it was a mess, especially because I had a high premium on making it look like it was perfect. And so it was just, I called it muddling through, but that's being generous with how messy and crazy and reactive, and it was out of control. And so I got the brilliant idea that I was going to do it all at the same time. I was invited to give a speech in Hawaii to a group of accountants, and I said to them, let me bring my two of my 4 kids that you won't even notice they're there. And I said to the kids, Mommy's going to Hawaii. I'm going to do a little work. You won't even notice it's happening. And it was as horrible as it sounds from the moment the plane landed, and it came to its gruesome, grisly end when I put the kids in a hula dancing class when I was supposed to give my keynote speech in front of 1,000 accountants, and the kids made a jailbreak and in their hula skirts came running down the center aisle of the convention center while I was on stage speaking. And it was a room full of men. I mean, I think if there had been moms in the audience, working moms, somebody would have had a heart for me, and they would have gotten it, and they would have said, oh, that poor woman. But this was in the late 90s, and it was a group of guys, and they were disgusted, and they probably should have been. And that night I went to my room. I was so ashamed. And I said, I got to get control of things, and maybe I just got to stop this reacting, and I've got to look at my life as a series of decisions and just slow this baby down. And every time I'm confronted with a decision, think about the options, and each option, think about the consequences in the immediate future. That's the 10 minutes, 10. And then the foreseeable future, that's 10 months. And then the last 10 is 10 years. That's the life I want to create. That's the proactive life I want to create. And I started using that device, which I call 10-10-10 right away. I started using it that day, and that day my life changed.
What a cool filter for how to make our decisions, to make our tough decisions too. Just remember 10 minutes, 10 months, and 10 years. For more tips from Suzy, just listen to the full episode on Game Changers. It's titled Suzy Welch on the 10-10-10 rule for making tough decisions. So many of us can probably think of relationships in our life that are sort of unhealthy, right? That aren't serving us potentially, and maybe not even the other person. And hopefully we can think of relationships in our life where we feel really supported and cared for, and they're really healthy. But I think it's incredibly important, and what Henry talks about here, Dr. Cloud talks about here, is how to get clear on the types of relationships that you're creating in your life, how to think of those relationships, how to identify the ones that maybe are healthy and the ones that aren't. So here's acclaimed leadership expert and psychologist, Dr. Henry Cloud.
Well, I think all of us can kind of treat that. I call it the map of the universe, our connectedness map, and it's like a GPS. And I think that any of us can see ourselves wandering around on that map at any given day because we're somewhere, and we're somewhere in every relationship. And if you take an athlete, for example, or a corporate leader, or anybody, and look at their closest connections, and they're going to be in one of those 4 corners. Number one, the disconnected place. They feel like they're kind of having, they're in it by themselves. You can even be in a marriage and feel disconnected and alone. Doesn't mean that you don't have people around you. And sometimes, on a team, a business team or a sports team or in somebody's life, they got a lot of bodies around them, but they're not really in any kind of vulnerable, trusting connection that's downloading and helping them get to the next level. So they're kind of like, in a sense, kind of running on old software and running out of fuel. So that's kind of that disconnected place. Corner 2 is when we look for a connection, but it's a bad connection. And I don't mean that it's abusive, But it's a connection where we end up feeling like we're not good enough. Like we feel bad about ourselves. I can't reach their expectations, or they're critical, or they're down on me, or they always point out what's negative, or kind of whatever it is, and I feel bad in this relationship. And that's not where great performance comes from. So then we go, well, I got to feel good somewhere. So we run down to corner 3, and that's the feel-good connection. So we'll go to a substance, for example. This is where a lot of addictions happen. People go to illicit relationships. They go to, web pornography or some other kind of addiction. They'll go looking for accolades and just surround themselves with people that stroke them and flatter them and think they're great. That doesn't make us better either. It's like a sugar high. It's going to wear off, and we're going to need another one. So the only place we really grow is down in that corner 4, and that's the real connections where our strengths are recognized and our failures are recognized, our struggles are recognized, they challenge us, they help us metabolize failure and learn from it and get better, they inspire us, they bring us up when we're down. That's where every performer's got to make sure that they're living each and every day in corner 4.
So, think about the most important relationships in your life. What corner are you in? I think oftentimes in life, the first step in making any kind of a shift is really just starting with self-awareness, right? Pulling back and maybe making a list of all the most time-consuming, the most energy-consuming relationships in your life and say, what quadrant do they sit in? And are they healthy or not? Using Dr. Cloud's methodology here and using these 4 quadrants can be a really healthy way to gain additional clarity. So if you want more, listen to his full episode. It's Dr. Henry Cloud on the 4 corners of connection. So I can't have a show called Game Changers without picking the brains of some incredible athletes. And I loved catching up with my friend and Hall of Famer Chipper Jones. Chipper opens his book with a story about a throwing error in his final big league game that cost the Braves a 1-game playoff. Baseball, he says, was going to force me to fail one more time. So Chipper talks about how to deal with failure, and it was a big theme, candidly, of our conversation, which is ironic from a guy like Chipper that had so much success at the big league level. So listen to him describe the role that failure plays in baseball, which is a pretty cool analogy for really stepping up to the plate in our own lives.
Fail 70% of the time at the plate, and you're considered in the running to be a Hall of Famer. So you better learn how to feel failure. I think after 19 years of playing in the big leagues and making 6,000 or 7,000 outs, at the plate and making errors in the field and losing, you play 162 games a year, you're going to lose anywhere from, 60 to 80 of them during the course of a season. So, when you add it all up, there's a ton of failure in this game, and the mentally weak will not last. It's an exercise in perseverance. It really is. And I think one of the reasons for starting the book the way that we did, quite honestly, I wanted to start the book with the unexpected. I think everybody picks up a baseball player's autobiography and they automatically think, well, it's gonna hook you with, a big walk-off homer, this, that, and the other. And I wanted to go a different way. This is a sport that beats you up. If you don't have the right mindset, it'll spit you out.
Butch Harmon is a legendary golf coach, and he told me once that the difference between good and great is the ability to recover from adversity faster than everybody else. Butch said, Molly, it's really that simple. He said, look, you look at the best golfers in the world scorecards, and they're going to bogey holes, but the best birdie the next one or they par the next one. You look at the best coaches in the world, they're going to lose games, but the best get themselves and their teams back in a place where they can win the next one. I think this applies to all of us as business people as well, right? We're going to have tough moments, tough calls, tough meetings, tough months sometimes, but the best find a way to recover fast. Great athletes have tools and techniques that they deploy mentally that allows them to get back in the space that they know they can have success. I think we as business people need to lean on things that get us back on track as well. Maybe save great emails or notes or or letters from clients or customers that remind you why you do what you do and that you're good at what you do. So to hear more from Chipper, just go to his episode, Chipper Jones, on what baseball taught me about failure. So this leads me to a pretty cool nugget from Tiger Woods that Billy Horschel shared with me. And here's how Billy described what he learned from Tiger and a visualization technique that he has used in his own life. And it was just so different than anything I'd ever heard from an athlete. I thought it was particularly interesting.
One thing that he mentioned to me a little bit, and then someone else expanded on it that was even closer to him, was something that I never did before, and I actually started doing it. I mentioned earlier was, seeing yourself, hit some bad shots, and seeing yourself, not, be as sharp as you want on the golf course. It's a preparation thing in your mental preparation. Obviously, like I said, you want to prepare yourself being successful. Seeing yourself hold up trophies, seeing yourself make putts. But one thing he does along with that is he sees himself, mid-hit a shot and be in a spot of bother and get it up and down and really grind through it in his mind and see himself, have to get up and down for 40 yards to make a par. That adversity aspect of it. He does a lot of that as well as the successful part of it, of seeing himself hit perfect golf shot after perfect golf shot. He's prepping his mind and prepping for the next day just in case he doesn't hit that perfect golf shot. He's got to work hard to get up and down to save something. He's already prepared himself for something like that. Mm-hmm. So I think, that's something I picked up from Tiger.
So again, it's that idea of resiliency, of recovering from adversity faster than others, and self-talk is certainly an important part of that. And visualizing your success is key, but I think what Billy and through Tiger helped him see was we've also got to be ready when things don't go our way and get clear and practice ways to get out of those situations as quickly as we can as well. If you like this clip from Billy, you can download the full episode. It's Billy Horschel on mental toughness. And so my final highlight from 2017 is from Tiffany Dufu, who wrote a book called Drop the Ball. And what she talks about is if we can learn to let go of perfection, she says, then we can achieve more by actually doing less. Amen, sister. I am finally I think, figuring this out. Here's how Tiffany talks about kind of sharing an aha moment, she calls it, that helped inspire her to actually learn to sort of drop the ball.
It was supposed to be a time management exercise, but honestly, we didn't get that far. And it was with about, 70, 80 women. And the first question was, hey, ladies, I want everyone to write down everything you expect to complete in an ideal day. I mean, everything. Like if you get up in the morning and go to the gym, write that down. If you wake up and you think about 20 minutes about how you should be going to the gym, but you're still in bed, write that down.
Wow.
If you've got to walk the pets, if you've got to prepare people for school, if you've got to prepare for presentations, your commute, every single little thing. And then I asked them to write down how long they expected it to take to complete each one of these items, and then to sum it at the bottom. And as I walked around the room as the facilitator, one of the things I noticed was that not one woman in the room had a sum that amounted to less than the 24 hours all of us have in a day. And I'm looking at the list, and so many of the women don't even have sleep on their list, even though their sum is more than the 24 hours. And for me, it was such an aha moment around how many women that I connect with are walking around with these feelings of inadequacy, as if we can't get it all done, as if we're not enough. And what came to me so clearly was, well, no wonder we feel that way. It's true. Our expectation about what we should be doing in an ideal day is humanly impossible. And so that in and of itself is a ball to drop.
So I challenge all of you, and especially the women out there who are listening, to do this exercise. To me, it was really eye-opening. I did it, and I can tell you my list was a whole lot longer than what could be done in 24 hours. So it was particularly helpful and insightful, and reminds us, ladies, to be gentle on ourselves, right? And at times to definitely drop the ball. So I thought that was a cool nugget from Tiffany. For more from Tiffany, listen to her episode on Game Changers with Molly Fletcher. It's titled Tiffany Dufu on the Myth of Doing It All. So I hope you've enjoyed all these takeaways from the first year of Game Changers. It's been so fun learning from all these amazing people, and I'm so grateful that these busy and terrific people have taken time out of their lives to share their wisdom, their mistakes, the lessons that they learned from them, and so many of their successes. So stay tuned for new episodes. They air every other week. And lastly, please know that we love feedback. So shoot me an email. It's molly@mollyfletcher.com. And let me know if there's guests that you want to hear more from, if there's guests that come to mind that you'd like us to try to have on, if there's things that you don't love about the podcast, things you love about it. We love feedback and welcome it. So please don't hesitate to shoot me a note that comes right to my inbox, and I read them all. So I can't wait to hear from you.